Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Working It Out podcast. Today, I've got Martin Yelling with me. Martin is the CEO and founder of Stormbreak and also the founder and co presenter of Marathon Talk. Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Martin.
Hello, Alex. Nice to see you.
Great to see you. So, we're going to jump straight into our first question, which we do with all of our guests. It's welcoming you to the Working It Out community. And to do so, what we like to do is induct one item from your relationship with physical activity into our Working It Out locker. So, is there any item that initially comes to mind when you think this signifies my relationship, or this was a really important item?
Like a physical item?
Yeah,
Like
physical
something
item.
physical?
Yeah, physical item. You don't. You can keep it at home. You don't have to give it to me, but we're going to put it into our virtual locker.
Yeah, so it can't be something, physical. I was thinking like around benefits, so I was thinking of virtual
Oh, we'll
things.
go there next. We go there next. Don't worry about that.
So if it's a physical thing, so I'm lucky, and I'm lucky because physical activity and moving has always had this really important part in my life, but for different reasons. And as I'm in my 50s now, those reasons have changed over the seasons that I've engaged with being active. But I think probably the one thing that stuck with me being active is running. So probably it means if you're going to have something in your locker, I'll probably have to give you one of these. Look, it's one of these shoes because
Amazing.
I love running, and running's been a real constant for me and has taught me so much about myself and has helped me, like, I guess become, I say running, but physical activities helped me become who I am today, and also helped me do what I do today and given me some absolutely banging opportunities. And so a running shoe, I guess, represents that. And these are special because they've got my name on.
I was going to say, are these special shoes? What do those
Never been
specifically?
worn. Never been worn. They're probably too small now and would injure me immediately upon putting them on. There we go.
That's amazing.
But
Thank you so much.
I'm actually going to keep them on the shelf.
Yeah, I've got so many items in my locker now, and I've nearly got a full running kit, which is fantastic. I've got Gary Laybourne, as you've met him, his running vest, and I've got your running shoes, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I've got a netball bib and compression socks. So I think we're on our way, and also a few trophies related to running too.
Yeah, running represents so much. That's why the shoes are in your locker, right? Running gives me travel. Like, running's helped me meet people. Running's given me lots of work. Through running, all the coaching and the training and the competing, and I met my wife through running. So I think a shoe, probably, that's about it, isn't it?
So talking about your wife and running, I remember doing Poole Park Run back in about 2012-ish and starting and then having your wife whiz past me running with a pram and thinking, blimey.
Yeah, I know. I spent lots of years trying to keep up with my wife. She went to a couple of Olympics in the marathon, won a Commonwealth medal, won the national cross country multiple times. And she also shares this passion for moving and running, but she's still the Team GB senior team manager. So she's still engaged, and she helps the younger athletes progress now and takes them on trips and things like that. But we've also been together for 32 years, and she's not listening, and she probably won't, Alex, but I don't know, maybe she will. But she's 50 this year, right? So she's 50 this year, and I keep jumping ahead. It's 32 years we've been together when she's 50, so I've got to be careful of that. And in the same sense, that journey with Liz and the journey with running has just helped us so much in everything we do. Yeah, so I'm sorry that she took you apart pushing a buggy.
I was mesmerised by it, to be honest. It wasn't a negative thing. I thought that's incredibly impressive. And then I'd like to do with not just talking about this, today we're talking fully about you. With when I was digging into your X, as it's now called, as I do with all of my guests, trying to find interesting bits, the amount of pictures I've seen from you from falling over whilst running, or bloody toes, or cuts on hands that you've posted on X, you can tell it's a real emotional roller coaster for you running.
Yeah, but I think that's what, like, life is there to be roller coastered through a little bit. And I don't mind a little bit of discomfort, and it probably seems odd, but one of the things that running and moving has given me is a capacity to tolerate discomfort.
Mm.
Not just physical discomfort, but the many different ways in which discomfort can thread through your life, an understanding and an appreciation for some of that. And running's given me that. And that's probably how it started as a kid, thinking actually running's something I can do, and running something that made me feel better, and running gave me a sense of escapism. But yeah, it comes with a few tumbles every now and again. Yeah, a few
I
fall
definitely,
off my bike loads, of tripped over loads of. Yeah, so it's part of the package of engaging, I think. I don't say that from an elitist point of view as well. I'm really part of work and has always been around taking what we know from experiences and implementing them in practice. I was just lucky that I could do things from a running point of view. I also understood, I did a PhD and a postdoc at Loughborough. And so I understood, and that was in physical activity and behaviour change in children and young people. And so I understood the application of some of those things in everyday lives as well. So yeah, I'm not harping on about how hard things has to be. But for me, that falling over happens too, doesn't it? Happens in
yeah.
everything we do.
Oh, I'm the most injury prone person out there. I fall over nothing. So it's get that from my mum. And so which leads us on to, we've digging into emotions a bit already, which is really nice. And you're saying you've tolerated discomfort through physical activity. The next part is around your relationship again with movement, physical activity, sport. And if we could pinpoint one word, one emotion that summarizes your relationship with physical activity.
Gratitude, I think.
That's an amazing one. Can you tell me why?
So I'm grateful that moving has been a constant thread in my own life, and it has been, and I hope that will continue. I hope I'm able to continue as I age a little bit more. My reasons for that gratitude have changed over the years. People immediately associate with participation, being thankful, but I am, because it gives me like having a really lifelong relationship and a trusted relationship that moving, being active, whatever form that takes, and it takes multiple different forms, and it has done for me, and it will for people that will listen, or really importantly, it will for the people who listen and the lives those people are trying to impact or reach with the work that they might do. And I put myself in that camp. How does the gratitude that I have for moving, and therefore the benefits it brings me physically and emotionally, how do we get that across in ways in which others can find gratitude in the movement that they do, so it can nourish them, can bring them joy, it can bring them happiness, all very complex things in modern life, and not something that movement is a simple medicine for, but something which, when you understand how to harness the capacity of being a regular active person, when you understand that and how to harness it, then you can deploy it with meaning and intent in your life. And so that's why gratitude works for me.
I think you've started to pick that apart a bit there in terms of, and you can see how when we talk about the work you're currently doing later on, how there is a real connect between your relationship with physical activity and the work that you do. Has there been times where throughout your journey, which you've maybe found it a bit more challenging in terms of mental health wise, or because like you said earlier, there's lots of like peaks and troughs in a journey with physical activity, isn't there?
Yeah, there always is. And I'm still excited when I meet someone who's found being physically active for the first time. So for them, it's a revelation, right? An absolute revelation. And I've met people for whom they say, I don't. So moving is something I never thought I'd do, but now I can't do without it. And yeah, so it's always full of change and adaptation. But a part of the capacity to harness, right, is capacity to harness means understanding how to ride something when it's not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it's not always simple, and it is complicated, and like you have less time in your life. I've got 3 children. I might be injured. I might just not be feeling it. It's the winter. It's raining all the time. Like there's simple things or more complex things come into play in your life, and so that sometimes means I change what I do. And motivation might take a dip, and I'll do something else. Stop doing it for a while, and pick it back up again. I hosted a marathon talk. You mentioned it at the beginning with Tom Williams. Tom and I are really good friends, and for 10 years we put out a podcast together. And every week we would interview someone, a bit like this, about why running was important to them. And for some people, it was because they were trying to win the Olympic Games, right? And some of our guests did win the Olympic Games. And for others, it was to overcome addiction. And
Wow.
for others, it was to recover from grief, right? Or other trauma that they may have experienced in their life. And we told stories about how other people benefited from having physical activity and movement in their life. And in doing that, I'm learning, like soaking it up like a sponge, thinking that's a fantastic piece of advice from whoever it was, Olympic champion or nurse who's discovered running for the very first time, and how it helps her recover for her next really busy shift in A&E, whatever. So has that sort of answered your question with a bit of waffle?
No, it's great, and I think that the addiction part is one that's sort of really interested me, because I've always said unfortunately, members of the family have had like a gambling addiction or a drinking addiction, and I've always said that my addiction, I'm just lucky that it's physical activity, sport. I'm doing it every day. If I don't, my behavior change, my attitudes change. I get the withdrawal symptoms from physical activity.
Yeah.
And I've said that the traits are all the same. Like I have to do it daily. I think about it all the time, and I get that huge buzz from doing it. I'm just lucky it's a positive thing.
And I have lots of conversations around that. And you will in my kind of role as a coach with people. I've been lucky to have lots of really beautiful coaching experiences over the last 25 years in coaching. And it's not just at elite level. I love coaching people to do things, whatever that might be. And actually what I love to do with my coaching is to enable and empower real independence, right? And to then really deeply explore what independence means. And for me, coaching isn't about I have quite a relational coaching style, and we build relationship, and I understand humans and their behavior, and I try and seek to understand what makes people tick.
Mm-hmm.
And once we do that, we can then put together the pieces that help them achieve whatever they want to achieve. And for some, they might come and expect coaching to take the form of a more traditional, here's what you're going to do, and you go away and do it. Whereas for me, it's so person and human centered and emotionally and relationally driven, right? That what you think you want coaching for is often not the real reason for the coaching experience. And as we go through time together, just through what you've said, if we were, and we're not, but if we were in a coaching relationship, my role would quickly become, what do you do when you can't move? What do you do when you can't? How do I equip you with the skills, the knowledge, the understanding that, yes, it's really good for you, but you are in control. It doesn't have control of you. You have control of it. If you can't run or bike or whatever else you do for a month, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. And that will, if it hasn't happened already, that will happen. I look to encourage real independence and real strength and real resilience and real human skill set for using moving to bring something to your life. So yeah, almost back to gratitude for trainers, aren't we?
You just caught me and did my link for me, which is good. So we've covered in a lot of detail kind of emotions linked to physical activity. And my next question is around earliest memory. So
Earliest
if I say
memory
to
of
you, what's your earliest memory of being physically active? It doesn't necessarily have to be a sporty one, but where does your brain go to from what youngest age? What is there any standout memories for you or earliest memories?
So I don't have a particularly active family. I don't come
Mm.
from a particularly active family. My background was one of a pretty poor, very poor, disadvantaged, working class background, being brought up with a single parent, sometimes with one parent, sometimes with another, then not a bit of uncertainty about where we were going to be. And with that came a couple of things. The first thing was just being outside. I don't remember as a particularly young kid, I don't remember very much. I don't remember having a big garden to go and play in or anything like that. But I
Mm.
remember playing on the street. I'm a bit older
Mm.
than you, Alex, but
Yeah, I did it too.
I remember being playing out on the street, and that's probably my first memory of escape. So freedom and creativity and independently learning how to do things as a growing boy. There's that bit. And then there's the competitive element and realizing that when I did sport, I could do it. And that's not because I had coaching or training or anything that we see now as structured exercise or coaching. That wasn't a part of my particular early memories. They were self-driven because I didn't have that nurturing environment for sport and physical activity. So it had to come from me. And then
Mm.
just being outdoors was something that I responded to, whether that was in a hedge messing about. So first memories were probably memories of being naughty, doing something I shouldn't be doing outside, right? So I could
Yeah.
run, right? So knocking on someone's door and running away was a good fun game. I'm not saying that we should be
No,
doing it, but like
everyone did it. They'll be lying if they said they didn't.
that's the sort of thing. And I thought, oh, this is fun. I could run
Mm.
away really quickly and I'm getting an adrenaline. And then actually then putting into play, okay, I can't remember how old I was when I did a first sort of school, probably at primary school. So a first memory of I can do this was at primary school, doing a running event and thinking, hang on, I'm miles ahead. How does that happen? And then thinking, if I do it again, it makes me feel better. And then I get
Mm.
friends because they see me doing it and they tell me that wasn't it good to see me out doing it, and that gave me certain sense of feelings. And yeah, so I think probably those two things: reckless enjoyment of the outdoors,
Mhm.
and then a little bit of capacity to be able to do stuff.
I think again, digging through your social media and all articles and stuff online, that's very evident as well throughout your life in terms of you. It looks like you've travelled everywhere across the world running. It looks like you've been on
Yeah,
adventures across the world. I've seen really cool trips to Africa. I've seen just holidays down on the coast, holidays abroad. There's always some top of a hill or edge of a cliff photo of you in running gear, which is really great to see.
it doesn't mean that that's for everyone, but that's
Mm.
what I happen to have learned about what I like to do now. I don't do any real like competitive running now. But if you said, let's go for a run, I live in Dorset and run along the Southwest Coast Path, yeah, I'd be well up for that. Yeah, and with a little jump in the sea and a play in the waves and a cup of coffee afterwards, days don't get much better.
No, I agree. I think I went to a wedding in Montenegro and my friends thought I was mad in the morning going out for a run because we were on holiday. But I was like, how beautiful is it? Like running along the coast in Montenegro and then jumping into the sea. That's holiday. That is a holiday
Yeah,
for me.
yeah, having the freedom and the time. When before Liz and I had children, like a holiday meant a training camp. When you live with someone who's going to the Olympics, like that is severe. Like that's brutal. It's not normal behaviour. It's the unhealthy other end of the spectrum.
Mm.
But yeah, like you, it's one of the patterns of my life is to do a little bit of moving most days. And sometimes that's a bit more and sometimes it's a bit less. One of the things around harnessing movement for effective ownership of what you want it to give you is knowing what you need that day. which is difficult. It's a difficult thing, knowing what you need, and then also knowing how to put the pieces around, around yourself if you're able to. And not everyone is. And, we should be really aware of that. We sometimes can artificially place movement in very restrictive and constrained environments where it's really hard. If I think of myself as a kid, if somebody said, can you go and do that? The answer would have been no. One, there's no finance. Two, I can't get there. So there's no ability for me to get anywhere, to do anything. Anything had to be done by myself. So we had no money for me to play any sport, and I couldn't get to anywhere. So I had to do what I could get to. Happened to be a running track a mile away, I could get there. So sometimes our sector can be, I think we're much better now at listening to people who live and spend time with intersecting inequality, with health inequality, with disadvantage, so that we can allow and shape movement to support them better so they can learn what to harness and how to harness it.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. And this is a part where we can start transitioning into the next half of the podcast, where we talk around the work that you do and then how we're going to tackle an activity. And there was a great bit that you said, which relates a lot to what the work you're currently doing. So a little bit of moving most days.
Yeah.
That was the line I really liked. And it was in terms of what you say you do. And I think people will see soon if I say, can you give me a bit of information about the work that you're currently working on with your organisation, and it's linked to physical activity and movement. I mean, that comes through massively.
I like to keep it relatively simple. And actually, the key message, I used to work in sort of behaviour change, physical activity promotion in kids, and particularly around professional development in education. So that was what my postdoc was in. My doctorate was a little bit different. It was more focused on children's capacity to regulate using physical activity. And at the time, the landscape for that was very different to now. This is the back end of the 90s, the early 2000s, really different. A little bit like my own views. I used to be a teacher as well. And when I started teaching back in the early 90s, like my own views on teaching and coaching have radically changed in the last sort of 30 years. So what I do know, though, is that for me and for some other people, a little bit of moving most days can really help. It can really help in lots of ways. The challenge is, what's a little bit? How can you do that most days? And I've spent lots of time exploring what was traditionally known as barriers to adherence, right? And I think the big thing is that I am an advocate for and a huge fan of opportunity. And it doesn't take much to help people see where the opportunity for movement in their lives exists. Once they begin to see the benefits that it can bring them and the people around them. You can't force people to move, but you simply can't. They have to see where the capacity to harness the benefits are. They then have to grab the reins. They then have to implement that into their lives. So the simpler you make it, the better. The more accessible you make it. My kids use this brilliant word, funner. Like, it was more funner. It's more funner. The more fun something is, the more social connection you can bring about. Sometimes. A lot of my moving I like to do on my own, as I'm a grumpy, miserable person that likes to spend a bit of time on their own. Sometimes with others, but find ways in which movement helps people and communities feel nourished and empowered together. And that's what we try and do with what I do now, which is Stormbreak, which is a charity that I set up off the back of lots of learning and lots of mistakes and trying to spend time in a physical activity, sport and performance space, which it was very much. And then trying to take that learning and apply it to a more of a missional, visionary, scalable space of supporting children's well-being, children's health, children's physical and children's mental health. And to do that through a very preventative stance. So strategically, I believe that, like I said earlier, when I meet someone who's embracing moving for the first time in their life, for them it's a revelation, right? And they're so excited. And they go, you know what? I've done my first 10K, or I walk the dog on the beach and I now do it every day and I can't do without it. Or I've started to play this table tennis with my friends, or whatever it is. I swim in a lake, I walk up a hill, I no longer take the bus, I walk 2 stops, and they can't do without it. And for them, it's groundbreaking. So I was like, why do we wait for adults to have that realization, that revelation realization where they're adults? Surely there's scope to do what we do with children and young people better when they're young, so that they don't find it out by mistake. They don't wait. They don't have negative experiences that put them off, but instead they have positive, nourishing, affirming, empowering, independent experiences of moving that have stickability and traction for their whole life. And therefore, when they become a bit older, like me, they've still got hold of the reins and they're still harnessing the benefits for them. So that's what we try and do at Stormbreak, is we try and package up moving into lots of different ways to create simple and accessible movement opportunities for kids to enjoy moving and its many benefits, whilst also directly, purposefully, and intentionally shaping well-being and skills to help those children recognize, talk about their thoughts and feelings, to respond to them. And sometimes we know kids don't respond to their thoughts, their emotions, in what adults would define as appropriate ways. I was one of them. You may have been, I don't know, people listening may think back to how they responded. I know adults that don't respond particularly well. In kids, we might see kids that withdraw, kids that chuck things, kids that fight, kids that shout, kids who are struggling. And right now, this is a significant issue across the UK. And so why wait to teach kids to recognize, respond, and regulate emotions through movement when we have the capacity to start those changes early? So that's what I was doing 20 years ago. That's what I picked up again in 2017. That's when we built a kind of a Stormbreak approach, and that's what we've been doing since 2017. 2018, we registered as a charity more formally. It's building ways in which kids can move to support their mental health.
That's an amazing answer. I think so. Firstly, thank you for giving so much detail, because what you've done there is brilliantly answered the first part, which is, okay, so if you were going to map out cause of inactivity, like, where would you naturally go and where would you focus on? I think the part which would be interesting to say, this is where you feel you could have an impact personally and where your personal interest is in, because you're speaking around opportunity and then the prevention stance. Thinking like England wide, is this where you see the priority is in terms of where investment should be, or is it in terms of the overall approach? Is it that?
There's lots of priorities, right?
Priorities never used to be a word. It used to be priority, apparently. This is as a fact, but then priorities got added into the dictionary in this century.
And priorities often come from a variety of different things. People's personal interests, right? You're shaped. An organization that you may work for or support, your personal beliefs, your moral values, lots of things that shape what somebody perceives as important, which they then place enough status upon to become a priority. Particularly for me personally, it's this notion that moving has such great capacity for supporting emotional well-being that we all have a responsibility to ensure that it's done to create enough opportunity in our young people that they currently, and when they are future young and adults and growing adults and aging adults, that a constant thread for them could be, not necessarily just, but could be the way in which they move in their world. That, therefore, the benefits of that are huge. We can start talk. Last week I read a report that said 500 children a day are being referred for support for anxiety. Right, 500 children a day. Now, when we first started building Stormbreak and we started talking about, actually, it's normal to worry. We all worry about things, and worry is a normal emotion. We very much have a positive being and a positive psychology coaching input. So worry is normal. We all worry. There are things you can do when you worry a little bit too much. And when that worry starts to impact upon your life, even when you're young, there are things you can do to help you understand that's a normal emotion to experience, and that you can change that emotion, or you can just sit with it for a while. You can learn that worry, and call it anxiety. Anxiety is something that can be helpful sometimes, right? And movement is something that can help you regulate that. So sometimes I might have had a really rubbish day. I know that movement can help me with that rubbish day. Sometimes I might be apprehensive or worried about something, and I know that moving can help me formulate a response to that worry, to not let that worry get out of control. But I need the skill set, right? So I need the skill set. And I'm lucky. I've learned that over 40, 45, 50 years. But lots of people don't and won't and haven't and should have the opportunity to. So my view is that what we do at Stormbreak is we try and support trusted adults that work with children and young people, that they have the power, potential, and capacity to support young children's lives through moving. Now, that's a complex sentence in itself, because a lot of adults don't believe that they have that, but they do. It's our job to help them discover that, to nurture that, to give them the toolkit to be able to increase their competence and confidence to deliver in that style. And then that has a scalable potential for impact on children and young people's well-being. So my lofty ambition is to have really healthy, active, happy children now that become the same when they're adults.
So then this seems very, as you said, you've been doing this for a long time, and it seems very natural, and it's still challenging, but it's part of your work with Stormbreak. For a traditional sports development, sports sector organisation who's been in the sector a long time, who delivers the sport, and they're going through this process of transitioning to focus on the wider benefits of sport, as they may call them, rather than just for sport's sake, as it used to be called.
Yeah.
So how does one move, start transitioning or move to a place that is the, apart from the answer being work with Stormbreak?
So look, we're probably all doing things like this because we do have a capacity to learn, right? And human beings are amazing, aren't they? Because they have a capacity to see things, to learn things, to change behaviors, to do things differently. And very much in movement, we have seen a shifting landscape, particularly in the last few years, right? And it may be there's a little bit of stuckness, right? A little bit of stuckness, but that doesn't mean to say it's insurmountable. I've seen significant changes in strategic priorities in national organizations, significant changes towards benefiting well-being and benefiting young people that sit far outside of the performance mindset or the old kind of more medals thinking, the just be active and that'll do it. And unfortunately, it doesn't. I've seen so many things where just do this and that happens, but it doesn't. The reality is there's no magic process of osmosis where you suddenly soak up better resilience skills just because you happen to do this activity. It simply doesn't happen. You have to intentionally, purposefully carefully understand the words that you use, the style and the approach that you do. If you're a traditional sports coach, you have to spend time understanding that so that you can support the well-being as well as the potential of the young people. So I'm really pleased that we're seeing a strategic shift towards well-being first. When we were working with elite athletes and like Olympians, Paralympic champions, we've coached people that do that, have done that. And the platform for that success is well-being. It's well-being, general well-being physically and well-being emotionally. That's the platform. If you don't have those pillars in play, then you're not going to get that kind of success. Mm-hmm. Equally, if you want to live a healthy, nurtured, fruitful life, whatever that looks like for you, and I don't subscribe to success metrics that other people might in life, that's why I work for a charity, you then see the potential of and the value of your own well-being, right? And then if you've got the toolkit to embed the things to help you, then you're more likely to give yourself the best chance to have a healthier, happier life. So I guess that's what we're about, giving people chance and opportunity to learn what those pieces are from an early age.
I think that's an amazing place to stop. So really appreciate you coming on today, Martin. For those who are listening, if you agree with what Martin said or disagree with what Martin said, the whole aim of this is to add to our working it out map, where we're mapping out the causes of inactivity and tackling inactivity and how we're going to solve the issue, as I call it, of inactivity. If once you're listening to this, do head over to LinkedIn where I post this, where I'm sure Martin will be up for a debate. If not, I definitely will be. And it's really interested to see everyone's views. So yeah, thank you again for joining us today, Martin.
You're welcome.